And Lloyd, 66 yards. He was wide open.
After the turnover.
He's got a man.
Harper going deep. Caught.
Welcome, everyone. Today, let's talk some Nebraska football. And the biggest question I have for everyone, because I've been hearing it all week, is are the Huskers being underestimated? All I've been hearing about is Indiana 6-0, Indiana. Are they one of the best teams in the nation? And I started thinking, this might be a good thing for Nebraska, and started wondering, man, is Nebraska being underestimated? So I want to get into that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, as it really does help the channel out. And it's something that doesn't cost you anything. And it does so much for the channel. It does so much for getting Huskers football and college football out to everyone who likes this stuff, and it sends it to them. So if you could do that for me, I know it's a lot of people that watch it are not subscribed. If you could just do that, click that little button. It's really appreciated. And of course, like always, smash that like button. Like I said, it's really appreciated. So I want to get back into this. Are the Huskers being overlooked? Are they being underestimated? And I feel like all week, all I've been hearing, and you could start off by the point spread. They have the Hoosiers favored by 6.5 points. I think it might be down to 5.5 now, which means a lot of people are taking Nebraska plus the 6.5. And no one's talking about Nebraska. It's all about Indiana. It's all about Indiana being 6-0. And so to me, I feel like the Huskers are getting no respect whatsoever, which is going to be a good thing, because this should put a chip on their shoulder. If they didn't have one already, it should put a chip on them to go, this is our time. This is our time to go up there and show them we're not the same team, because Nebraska has not beaten a top 25 or an AP top 25 team the last 25 times they played a top 25 team, going all the way back to 2011 when they beat Penn State. So you're looking at 13 years. They are 0-25 since then. I think a lot of that has to do with why you see Nebraska being underestimated, being overlooked. All I've heard is about the points that Indiana's put up, the scoring they've put up, the defensive play they put up, which, yes, is impressive. Don't get me wrong. And when you do that to any team, it's impressive. But if you looked at their schedule and looked who they've played, what is the toughest game they've played so far? If you had to look at their team or look at their schedule of who they play, what's the toughest one? I know they played FIU. They played Charlotte. They've played Northwestern, UCLA, and Maryland. And out of all them teams, who would you put as the best team of them? It might even be Northwestern. If not, maybe Maryland. They did do UCLA at UCLA, and you could say that one, but you're out there in the Sunshine State. When you go to the West Coast, you got to cross over a couple of time zones, going to an earlier time. So when you're playing, mainly if you play late, play a late game, say 7 o'clock at night, it's really 9 o'clock at night where you're at. And if you're coming from the East Coast, it's 10 o'clock. Might give it to Maryland, but you could see no matter which one you pick, there isn't really anyone on the schedule they've played that would scare anyone. But I understand Nebraska has not, everybody's kind of going by what they've seen in the past. And they haven't really done anything to really change that philosophy. I mean, again, They have won a couple close games the last couple times, but I think they kind of overlooked it on how they played or who they played themselves. They handled Colorado pretty handily, so that really wasn't close. And Nebraska struggled in the second half, where Indiana, that's probably where they picked it up the most, is closing out games, where Nebraska hasn't done it. Now, has that been by choice? Some of it we've been told, yes, it has. Well, we couldn't figure it. Some, things just started, didn't go as planned. A penalty here and there took them out of rhythm or something like that. That's kind of what we've heard. So I want to start off with comparing, and I think this might be the biggest question that all of you could answer, and tell me in the comments what you think. You start off with the quarterback, which was our demise last year. Who has the quarterback advantage? If you had to look at Dylan Raiola or Curtis Rorick, tell me which one you think would you want? Which one has the advantage, or is there an advantage? Now, to me, this is the game Dylan can make his case right now. Because Dylan, everybody knows he's going to be a great quarterback. To me, he's going to be a top 5 NFL probably draft player unless something happens, gets hurt or something, and probably will be in the Heisman race by his junior year. Definitely by senior year if he stays that long. And everybody keeps convinced he's leaving for the NFL early. Dylan loves Nebraska, and by then Dayton will be here. And so I'm going to tell you right now, I could see him staying all 4 years before he goes, depending where Dayton is in his development for taking over. Now, if Dayton is ready to go to take over the offense, then I think Dylan might then move on, let his little brother have the reign. But if it wouldn't go to him anyway, if he feels like there, I could see Dylan staying one more year, especially if they got a veteran team to the point where maybe they could win it all that. So I could see him staying. So I'm not convinced he's going to just run straight to the NFL. Yes, that's where he wants to go. That's what he's planning on go. But have you noticed already about him? He's not your typical freshman. He's not your typical player. He's patient. You've seen how patient he is in the pocket when he's playing. He's in no rush. He's not like your typical player where they're like, I can't wait to get the NFL. He probably can't, but he's got a smart head and he knows what he needs to do and what he doesn't need to do. So don't just think he's going to run off come his junior year. Now, if he does, he still might, but I could see him staying his final year. So question is, who do you think has this advantage? To me, Dylan, like I said, could turn it around and start. He's had 6 games under saying, let's go. It's my time now. And I think that's why a lot of people are looking at it going, well, I'd probably give it to Curtis Rorick. But you got to think the Hoosiers run zone 95%, over 95% of the time on defense. They've only ran man to man 20 plays. 20 plays out of about 450 total plays, maybe even more. I hadn't looked it up exactly, but if you're looking between 70 and 80 plays a game, played 6 games, you're looking about 450 to 480 plays. They've only ran 20 plays in man. Now, will they run more man? Because Nebraska and Dylan, he's knocking it out of the park against the zone. He's completing over 90% versus a zone to about 44% against man. So do they come back and run more man because of that? But then again, if that's not their cup of tea, are you getting out what you normally would do, changing what you normally do if that's not your strength? So that's going to be a good question. I really want to see what they do. But that's why I said, I feel like this could be Dylan's game. This could be a breakout game for Dylan Rowland. Now, he's going to need help. He's going to need help in the backfield. He's going to need help from Nair and Banks or some of the other receivers, maybe even Fedoni. So this is a game this offense can prove themselves. You got to understand that Dylan, when he goes against zone, he is a cool cucumber. He sits back there and just picks it apart. He knows where to go. He can put that ball right over the linebacker. You just seen it so much that linebacker thinks he's got it and it's barely over his hands. It's like an artist just painting away. I want to get into Curtis Rourke. Now, if you want to look at Hoosiers, Curtis Rourke is like 6'5", 223 pounds. He's a 6-year senior. And that's why you might want to give the edge to Curtis Rourke. He's a man. What they say, when he came into college football, Dylan Raiola was in junior high. I think he was probably about 13 years old. He was probably 7th, 8th grade. All right. And he wasn't highly recruited. He went to Ohio, had a very good career, and he has the numbers to prove it. He is right now has the number one QBR in the Big Ten. He's completing over 74% of his passes. He's got 14 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and he's 6-0 this year, but he is 28-11 overall. So he knows how to win. Don't get me wrong, he's a very good quarterback, and he's probably more mobile than you think he is, more mobile, and that's always kind of given Nebraska trouble, and I do expect him to probably run more in this game. I'm sure they watched him because the one thing I've seen him, what's helped him out is the play calling, the coaching. So to me, that's what's made him what he is. And you got to understand, Indiana had brought in 27 transfers. They're almost like Colorado was, but the difference in their 27 transfers was they went out and looked. They looked for specific transfers. They didn't look for 4-star, 5-star. They looked who's played the most, who's got the most experience in college football, and who's won the most and has that attitude, that winning attitude. That's who he went and got, kind of like Rourke here, who was 22-11 coming in, going into this 6th year, got a lot of experience and confident. And so out of them 27, 14 are starters, and they're split pretty evenly, 7 on offense, 7 on defense, which means about 73% of their team playing, starters playing, there's a 73% difference from last year, 73 different players from last year that are transfer that just came in. So to me, when you watch them and you watch the film, you could see their line, you could see all of it. You could tell they're playing above their talent. Not saying they're not talented. They're just playing way above it. They're playing together. They're playing as a team, which is kind of unusual for a bunch of transfers coming in the first year. Again, you give credit to the coaching staff, you know. And so to me, that's what's made Indiana as good as they are. And they are now a top 10 top 10 offense in the country, top 10 in the country, not just Big Ten, top 10 in the country. They are number 2 in scoring, averaging 47.5 points per game. And they are number 4 in total yards per game at 515.7. They average over 515 yards per game. The Huskers only give up about 272 yards per game. So you kind of got strength on strength. I want to move to the black shirts. Are the black shirts over their head? Is this going to be the toughest offense the black shirts have seen this year? A lot of people I've watched said, yes, this is going to be the best offense they've seen. And overall, they might be right. Overall, running, passing, blocking, I think they're right. Are they the most talented they faced? No. Colorado is probably Shedeur Sanders is a way better quarterback, NFL caliber quarterback. Travis Hunter, NFL caliber receiver, corner, even the other receivers on there. They got better quality in receivers and a passer, but they don't have the running and they don't have the offensive line blocking as Indiana does. So because of that, that means a lot. And so I feel like with all the talk, and the one thing about it, if you agree with me, the Huskers defense is probably their strength, even though at times they've looked at. But the one thing about Tony White, he's when there's something that's given up, he's went and fixed it. Because I'm telling you right now, if Indiana looks at Illinois' game and all that and says, okay, we're going to do that, I think they'll be in trouble because Tony White does one thing well, and that's if something's not working, he goes in right away and fixes it. Where the next team who tries to do it, oh, they have to change it up and do their own thing. They have to now decide how they're going to play this game. And we've already seen that. When you look at Nebraska's defense, well, they lead the Big Ten in sacks and for tackles for loss, and they allow only 11.3 points per game, which is seventh in the country in all of FBS, seventh. And they only allow 272 and a half yards per game, which is 14th in the country overall. So to me, this is going to be far most the best defense Indiana's faced. Probably not even close. The best. This is going to be the best defense they've faced. And they're definitely probably going to be the best defensive line they've faced. And probably the best defensive line they're going to face all year. And that is the question. Does Nebraska have the best defensive line in the country? You could arguably say they do. And now, do they have the best player or best players? No. But overall, when you throw in Nash and you throw in Ty Robinson, then you throw in James Williams coming in, Butler, when you throw all them in, overall, they probably have the best defensive line in the nation or playing the best. And that's what's going to help Nebraska because they're going to have to get to Rorik. It's got to be similar to the Colorado game. You got to make sure they don't have time. He can't sit in that pocket. And so the secondary is going to be key. Hopefully Tommy Hill was healthy enough to play, or we could use Sierra Wright on top of that because like Rule says, you're going to need all corners on the team, all on corners team. And the one thing also, and I know a lot of you who follow Nebraska already know, out of 6 games, we've already went 7 weeks. Nebraska's played 6 games, and they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown. They're the only team in the FBS in the nation that has not allowed a rushing touchdown. Will that stay? No. And wouldn't be surprised in this one. You're not going to hold Indiana to nothing. You know, Nebraska averaging only giving up 11.3 points. I'd be shocked if they kept them around 10 or 11 points. Okay. And the question is, how well will they do? Will they get that first rushing touchdown? I'm not sure. They love passing more. I know they look like they have that balance, but they're more of a passing team. They like going in the air and throwing in that run that, kind of throw you off guard. And I got a gut feeling they're going to be reading Nebraska's defense. They're going to run a lot of RPOs, more RPOs than the Huskers have seen all year. And when they see James Williams on the field, they're going to know they're coming after me. Boom, handoff up the middle. So Nash and Ty's got to do their job. That middle's got to do their job. When you got Butler and them in there where they're more of that rush defense, boom, that RPO, fake it, boom, play action, pass the ball. So I think they're going to read that defense and a lot of times see what personnel are on there and go off of that. So players who normally don't play the pass going to have to step up against the pass, and players that normally don't play the run going to have to step up and stop the run. They're going to have to do their job. You need to be that kind of player where you could rush and stop that run. So that way they can't figure out what are you looking for. Because of that, I want to get into, are the Hoosiers that good? Are they a playoff team? Or do you see them going deep? You got to understand, and I know a lot of you have seen Nebraska. They've struggled their last few years. You haven't seen them really win. I grew up when Nebraska always went to a bowl. They went to all my life, they went to a bowl. 30, what was it, 34, 35, 36 straight bowls all my life. A bowl was nothing. They would start off 6-0, 7-0, 8-0 before maybe they lost 1 or 2 games. Okay. That was given. You didn't ask yourself, are they going to be good? 8 players are leaving. Well, they say, oh, they got to rebuild these teams. No, we always said that we're reloading. All right. So that was different. Now, last few years, last 10 years or so, they haven't been as good. But you know what? Indiana really hasn't either. They haven't beaten Nebraska since 1940s, I believe it was. They haven't beaten them in Indiana, I think, since 1897. But they come in 6-0 for the first time since 1967. 1967, guys. I'm about to turn 61 on Saturday. So my birthday present's going to be Nebraska beating Indiana. And the last time Indiana was 6-0 in football, I was 4 years old. I just turned 4 years old. So that's been a long time, and they have never won 10 games. Never. I mean, Nebraska's won 10 games multiple times. Couldn't count them all. They've won 10 games. And so we want to get down to see what are the keys to winning. So what is the keys for a Husker win this week? And I've looked at this and I feel like, and it's going to be a little different probably than normal, I say, because the basic stuff are the same. But I feel like to keep that offense off the field, you're going to have to control the clock. You're going to have clock control, win that time possession, maybe try to get 35 to 40 minutes or more. If you could do 40, 20, maybe even better than that, you definitely got a good chance. Because I think, one, you got to keep our defense fresh. And two, you got to keep their offense off the field. And two, and this one I know I throw in there all the time, is no mistakes. And I'm talking about the special teams needs to do its job. No dumb penalties or any penalties. And when we talk about dumb penalties, we're talking about that false start and stuff like that. Sometimes that, the little stuff or something that happens, holding kind of happens every now and then, but the pre-snap penalties or the 15-yarders that wasn't thinking and you're throwing a punch or trying to punch at the ball, things like that. Don't try to do that, and don't give them extra downs. You got to clean that up. And another big one, and this might be a shocker to everyone, but another big one is, to me, is Rule can't get out coached. None of these guys don't get out coached this game. Because tell me, that coaching staff over there, even though they're young and haven't really been in the FBS very long, their head coach coached under Saban. I believe he was a receiver coach. I believe back in the mid 2000s, back when Sue was still playing with the team, and so you could tell he's going to be a great coach. And right now, he's proven it. This is their game to prove they belong. This is the game that's going to show everybody, are they for real, or was they just not playing anyone? And then you go to Nebraska. This is the game to say, hey, if we're really for real, if we are really relevant and we've turned the corner, we got to start this weekend. We got to go in there and show them, get physical, and show them we're here. We're going to be serious. It's going to be a loud crowd. It's going to be sold out. I believe, I don't know how many of these are going to be Husker fans. I got a feeling a lot of them are going to be Husker fans, but it's their homecoming as well. So it's not going to be as much as you think it is, because one, they're winning. It's their homecoming. So this is probably one of the games that they go to usually anyway. So I think it's time to give my prediction, and I feel like this is a game. This one's set up for the Huskers and the Huskers defense. I think our offense is good enough to move the ball. I know they talked about Indiana's defense being one of the top defenses, but I think a lot of that has to do, they just really haven't played anyone. They haven't played any. Nebraska might even be one of the better offenses they've seen, and Nebraska's offense ain't the best, but with Dylan Raiola, I'm telling you right now, the kid is he's learning as he goes. He corrects his mistakes. I don't see him having two back-to-back games, especially with a bye in between, and struggle. He's one of those players that learns from what happens and goes, okay, need to clean that up. He doesn't harp on it. It doesn't bother him. You could tell that by after the game, just all excited they won. He didn't say, oh, man, I sucked, you know. That's what you got to love about the kid, and that's what you got to be when it comes to being a quarterback. Got to forget about what happened. So I feel like Nebraska, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a back and forth game. It might come down to who has the ball last. And I just feel like at the end, Nebraska's probably going to pull this one out. I think special teams is going to still struggle, but I think the defense is going to hold them a couple of times for the field goals instead of touchdowns. And because of that, I think Nebraska pulls this one out 28-27. It's going to be very close. It's going to go back and forth. If you're a gambling man, I definitely would take Nebraska plus 6.5. If it's 5.5 now, I'd take plus 5.5. I think the over under is at 50.5. I'd definitely take the over. I think it's going to be over. It's going to be hard to keep Indiana out of the 20s. If they definitely keep them to me under 24, 21, definitely under 21. Nebraska should win this game. I do feel like Nebraska should do well unless they get in their own way. And it all depends on that. Don't get in your own way. Don't make the mistakes. Don't do the penalties. If you play a clean game, play a game that you know you could do, and like you practiced, they'll win this game. So that's my prediction. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you feel is going to happen. Is this a game you feel like Nebraska can win? Tell me what your score is. And before we go, I'd like to get into that Oregon-Ohio State game, that call where Dan Lanning, it was genius. I've never thought of it. It looks like no other coach has thought of it. And tell you guys think about it, how genius this was, because what you're doing is you're benefiting yourself. It's different than others, but Dan Lanning put 12 men on the field when it was like 3rd and 25 for Ohio State, and Oregon was leading by 1, and they're trying to get in field goal range. He put another player out there and had 12 men on the field. So you got that other defender. And I questioned, why not put 2 more out there? Why not put 13 out there? You know? But he put that extra one, so it's a little tougher for them to get it, which they couldn't, because Ohio State will have a choice of taking the play or the taking the yards they get or the penalty. But when you're putting that, it's not like going out there and holding or jumping off sides and coming back and going, okay, there's flag, because you're still 11 on 11. They could get a big play. You're just giving a really kind of a free down. But when you're putting another defender out there, you're helping yourself on top of it. But on top of that, it's like, okay, so what, we get called? There's only like 20 seconds left, 20, what was it, 25 or something like that. And so after the play, they didn't get anything, couldn't go anywhere. They called the illegal substitution, I believe it is, the 12 men on the field, and gave them 5 yards, moved them up 5 yards, still out of field goal range, but now there's only like 6 seconds left. It was brilliant. And it's a surprise, out of all these years, no one else has thought of that. Now, they did change it. They changed it right away. You thought maybe they were going to change it next year, but they decided, nope, we ain't going to have people start doing this all year and let us seeing this all year and constantly doing this, because the rule states you got to let the clocks run, when the clock runs off. So now you get the yardage no matter what. You get the 5 yards no matter what. So now when you do it in the last, I believe it's the last 2 minutes. So now when you do it in the last 2 minutes, you're basically getting a free play. Yeah, there's 12 men on the field, but if you get a big play, then you can take that yardage. But if you don't, you still get the 5-yard penalty, but you get the choice of putting the clock back. So if there was 25 seconds left, they'll put it back at 25 seconds, and that's going to be huge. So that's the only time you're probably going to see it now, because I thought you're going to start seeing this from everyone for the rest of the year. And then they changed it in the offseason. Well, they got smart and said, hey, let's not make the mess out of this, because this is going to be a mess. Because you think about it, you just constantly do that, and time's going to constantly tick off. You got an extra defender on the field, say, okay, get the yardage again. I'm like, go back and do it again. I feel like that was a smart thing to do. I thought, do you let it just happen one time, and if it happens more than that, you do that? Or do you, if it happens more than once, do you then call an unsportsmanlike penalty? But they took care of it, so now you cannot do it. You guys tell me what you think below. What do you think about that play? What do you think the Huskers and Indiana? How's this game going to look? You got strength on strength. You got one of the best defenses against one of the best offensives statistically. All right. How do you think this is going to be? Can Nebraska hold them down? Is this something that Indiana comes in there and says, hey, we're going to prove that we're really legit? And if they score 30 points or more on this defense, then you have to tip your hat to them because they're averaging 47. And if they get 47, guys, it's going to be a long day for Nebraska. So tell me what you think. And like always, if you want to email me at jeff@bigredcountry.net. And of course, like always, please subscribe to the channel. It's really appreciated. Doesn't cost you anything. And as always, smash that like button. Until the next video, guys, go Big Red.